If I ask ChatGPT, again, let's say ChatGPT, if I ask the model to produce me code for a specific thing, it would produce it. Maybe it won't run, or maybe I would need to debug it for 3 hours, but it will produce it. If I ask for a model to produce a proof of something, it might be able to do it, but most likely it will fail, and it will fail in the logic part. So a part that we know from studies is that large language models can mimic knowledge, but do not really understand the logic behind of it. So probably won't be able to also produce a proof. So mathematicians, and what a knowledge graph offers in all this AI field is capabilities of data quality checking, explainability, especially if you have like a black box, or somehow post or prior to the computation, and being able to see if we get some proper results and we can actually explain, or get some less risk in some applications.
Welcome to our podcast, Tech Tertulia AI and Beyond. Who are we? I am Evelyn.
I am Diana, and we are here because we are interested in technology and artificial intelligence. If you want to know more about us, just listen to our edition number 0. All right, so today we will explore AI in education. This is a big topic, but we will deep dive a bit further. And let's just a quick reminder of all collaborations. So we have WN, Marketing, Design, and Video Production Agency, who is in charge of our production, image design, and social media management. So everything that you see beautiful is thanks to her. And we have network of Ecuadorian women mathematicians who support us mainly with the diffusion of this podcast. So you will also see them in our promotions. So now let's go back to you, Evie.
Exactly, and I am going to introduce our great guest for today. So she's Eleni, and she is an early stage researcher in knowledge graphs at the L3S Research Center in the Leibniz University of Hannover in Germany. Eleni's areas of interest are artificial intelligence, knowledge graphs, ontologies, semantic web, recommendation, personalization, visualization, and data characteristics. And her research is focused on personal and domain knowledge graphs in education application. As a member of Knowledge Graphs IT in, Eleni had research visits at the University of Vienna in Austria, the NLP group of the University of Sapienza, and Babelscape in Rome, Italy. She has a decade-long experience in education as a teacher and as a tutor in STEAM in school courses between 6th and 12th grade, mathematical competitions, European and international baccalaureate, undergraduate and graduate courses, and chess. Her background is in computer science and mathematics. She holds a master in science and engineering in applied computer science from the University in Brussels in Belgium, with a specialization in smart cities, a bachelor in mathematics from the University of Ioannina in Greece. Her research has been published in semantic web venues and interdisciplinary journals between computer science, education, and e-learning. She has served as a member of the organization committee in the conferences of HELME 222 and ESWC 23. Short-term scientific mission grant from cost action distributed knowledge graphs for creating curricula for knowledge graph related educational resources in the City University London. So this is an important curriculum. Welcome to our podcast, Eleni. So how are you feeling today?
Hello, ladies. Thank you very much for hosting me and for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very excited to talk about education and AI.
Amazing. Thank you, Eleni. We're super excited too for this topic. And let's just remember that we are going to have at the end a little bit of tips and also some information about what is coming up in the future and some interesting topics as well. So keep tuned because you will not want to miss this, as well as we want to formulate a question for our next guest. This is something that we usually do as kind of a game, and we will have also some information there from our previous guest speaker. But let's start first with an icebreaker question. What about if we ask you, Eleni, so if you can tell us something that most people don't know about you and AI, something that they don't know, if they hear or see or watch this video later, they say, oh, I didn't know that about Eleni. So what that would be?
Would it be about me or about AI?
Something related with you, and perhaps that in somehow and in some parts could be something related with AI.
I would say then something related to semantic web, which most people do not know that it's falling in the umbrella of AI, if you could say. And it is that it's a very multidisciplinary field. So mostly AI is people from computer science or some mathematicians and physicians or people coming from IT. But in semantic web, I have seen really a vast majority of people not being computer scientists, being biologists, social scientists, coming from general humanitarian studies. Of course, there are computer scientist people there, but it's so multidisciplinary. So this is a fun fact that you don't need to be a computer scientist, in a sense, to be involved in AI research. Especially in semantic web, most of the people come from other fields.
Yeah, that's so true. I also have met a lot of people in these interdisciplinary fields. Nothing to do with computer science and still learning a lot about artificial intelligence. Sorry, sometimes the language, yeah. Okay, so now let's go to business. And now we would like to talk about what you do and what's your research about. Maybe just in general words, a little bit briefly.
Yes, following up a bit nicely introduction. Thank you very much also for making this. I am a researcher in L3S Research Center, basically early stage researcher, which means that I'm pursuing a PhD. My area is in semantic web. More specifically, I'm working on personal and domain knowledge graphs in education. That means in e-learning platforms. And what we do there is we try to examine the knowledge graphs, which are basically, you can imagine as graph databases that contain, as a graph database would be with entities and nodes. But we're trying now to connect the big ones, which could be, for example, the Wikidata, which is behind Wikipedia. Everyone knows Wikipedia. What's behind Wikipedia with all these hyperlinks and entities that are identified is Wikidata. And there are many big encyclopedic knowledge graphs, such as Wikidata. And we try now to see how a domain-specific knowledge graph, such as one in education, or personal knowledge graphs on top of these bigger knowledge graphs, can have effects positive in educational from e-learning platforms that utilize somehow these knowledge graphs.
Very, very, very interesting, Eleni. Thank you very much. And I guess we will dive a little bit further in the next sections. So I will not do questions. But then let's go to the next questions, Dianita.
Yes. Well, I think it's very interesting what you just mentioned. And of course, we wanted to know more about, especially in the part of AI of education. So in what ways can artificial intelligence be integrated into educational systems to improve learning experiences and educational outcomes at the end of the day, right? You just mentioned that with your research, you already are doing that, but perhaps with your view and your expertise, can you tell us a little bit more about this umbrella of AI in education?
Yes, there are actually a lot of things that are happening there already in the last decades. I think it became more prominent, the need for it, because before there was research, both from the educational researchers, both from computer science and from the people in technology enhanced learning, but we weren't really paying serious attention to it, I think, if I may say, as a personal opinion, before the COVID-19 pandemic, where everything shut down, but the education needed to continue. So what would you do there? It's these Zoom meetings or this whole homeschooling that need to continue. And then the need for both remote, better learning experiences, but also now with the ChatGPT, that is very accessible to everyone, students and teachers, it becomes more prominent that maybe AI is integrating in education in more ways than we had already foreseen, because there are also robotics that are used in classrooms. There is a lot of AR and VR applications related to educational goals. And what I'm working on, again, is like on the semantic web with the knowledge graphs, which I believe strongly can and will probably in the future affect education, because they can provide a good basis for quality content and data collection and data control. So there are so many areas actually in it, and there is research going on now. Definitely the last 50 years, but the last 20 years is something more applicable that we see in platforms. There are a lot of also industrial and startup tries, like the Khan Academy. It's a very popular one, which they try to push a bit further this, but still it's growing and it's in its early stages, if I may say. Although it's a funny thing, because there are two main areas that people will need during their life, most likely. One is health domain, and one is education, because everyone passes from education. It doesn't matter from which country you are being raised, where you were born, what you are going to study, you are going to pass from an educational system. So, and it's also a funny thing in my experience, and that's why I'm also very motivated and interested in this domain, in this smart education that hopefully is coming, is that there are not that many changes that have happened on how we teach in the last 20, 50, or 100 years. The books are similar, the content is similar, and the way we teach is similar. The digital transformation of education that was also very motivated from EU, from European Union, as a big action in 2020, if I remember correctly, or 2021, it still pushes things to become more into the new age. However, I don't think the solution would be just taking a book that is in paper and making it as a PDF. There's something more that needs to be done there. And that's what I'm saying. I think there is great potential. There are a lot of applications that are coming. Yeah. And hopefully in the next years, we would see great changes in it. This definitely will take some time to be integrated in the institutional education, which is learning in public schools. But maybe if we just, if a teacher or a student in a remote area wants to have access to quality content, or wants to have a more motivating and more personalized or adaptive educational experience, maybe based on their special needs or anything else, or their background, could probably have it.
So do you think then that there is a need to use, for example, artificial intelligence to be useful for the teacher, so to improve teaching, maybe than for learning? Maybe we already have a lot of tools that help us or support our learning, but not for teaching. Do you think there is an imbalance there?
I think a lot of things that target the individual student and not so much the teaching in a classroom setting. Maybe much more things are applied to one-on-one or self-regulated learning, when someone is just going alone to learn something on the web or wherever it would be. And not so much in one-to-many setting where we would have the traditional classroom where we have the teacher and we have the students. There are multiple also parameters we need to consider there, which are that if, besides the institutional that I mentioned before, that something is probably, in order to be implemented in schools, approved by its government and its Ministry of Education, we also need to have trained the teachers to use these materials, because okay, we are researchers. I'm very interested in education and technology enhanced learning, and I'm pursuing that. But there might be a teacher in mathematics, as I'm also a mathematician, that has zero idea how to use a smartphone. And that's actually a true case of people I know. So you cannot really force someone to adapt to this change. We need to find a middle ground. And I think the way to start there is from the students, also because they are growing up in the technology, they are used to it, and because they are the ones first in need of it. It's not that much the institution that understands. We have a bit of understanding. Right? Also, the big heads, like even EU, says, okay, maybe things need to change, but definitely we are not there. We're not right at the door of the change yet. But students are. Like I remember, so before joining computer science, I was a mathematician, and I actually wanted to do my further studies in didactics. I didn't want to, I wasn't really thinking of computer science that much. I thought that it's too difficult and it's not for me. And I had a student actually in one of these, I was doing an Erasmus placement in the Greek high school in Brussels. And I was teaching as the main teacher because due to some issues, there was no mathematician, so I took over some classes. And I remember a student saying, why do we do this? And why do we do it like my mother was taught and my parents were taught? Why can it not be more fun? Why we have this exercise that looks so much like the 80s, that has zero correspondence to the nowadays and how things are in reality of 2016 and 17 back then, which is very right. And that was also one of my motivation of thinking, okay, I have ideas of how things can become different, and why not then try to make them? So that's what we are trying to do lately. Yes.
Very valid
I love
questions.
Yeah, no, and I love how you put it, because you were saying a lot of words. I was taking just a mental note, and you say smart learning, and you also mentioned maybe as well as like this is a both sides, right? So from the learning perspective of like the person who's learning and the person who's teaching. And I want to ask you, Eleni, thinking about all of this, and you mentioned a few of them already, what do you think are the main challenges besides the ones that you already mentioned? Because I think about education, I see multiple things, like, as you just said, an example, we are facing that we have a structure that comes from very generations, right? So it's like we have the same structure as our parents were taught. And, you know, there are a few more minor tweaks here and there, but at least in Ecuador, I could say not many things have changed. Perhaps just in terms of like topics, perhaps some of the new kids are learning robotics and computer skills. I could say because my some friends kids have told me that, but besides that, we are not seeing anything else, right? So I'd like to see what are the challenges. You already mentioned that it's critical about the trainer, about the teacher. If he or she finds it difficult to put this in practice, to adopt that new technology, then it will be a challenge. What else we could see as part of the challenge in AI in education?
I think there are two main factors here. One is how we teach the topics that we have already, so how we enhance them, in a sense. And the other one that you slightly brought up with the robotics is, do we keep the topics and which ones new we introduce? I think already we can see that there is a need, and there are so many online courses. There is the demand, there is the market value, and we can see that there are people there are people interested in all this AI and learning related, whatever it would be, which area of AI it would be, doesn't matter. So one thing I believe it would be considered is having the curricula, especially in computer science, but not in a university education, in still high school and mainstream education, being a bit shifted towards supporting that, at least slightly, maybe in the next 20 years. We see it already in the universities, because the universities do not have specific standard to follow, but there are so many bachelor and master studies introduced related to AI, really umbrellas, topics and domains. Now, related to specifically how we enhance its topic, one aspect can be simply introducing accessibility. What accessibility might mean? Might mean that we support people that are dyslexic. We support people that have different educational needs and learning needs with appropriate content. This happens sometimes. If you see some web pages have this accessibility little man that you click on it and you can adjust. You can have all the text being read to you, or you can have the fonts changed. That's something that can happen. But it's also, we can definitely make the learning more fun. And this is something that you can realize, because everyone has in mind one teacher from the school years that made a difference. And why they made a difference? First of all, because they liked it, they knew how to teach, and they liked the topic, so they had their ways around it to also attract the attention of the students, but also to explain well. And another factor there, because in my career I was a teacher of mathematics for a lot of years. And usually people who call you, sometimes it might be people who want to train for mathematical competitions or to achieve from 19 to make it 20. But sometimes it would be people who are really struggling with mathematics. And it's always the case that someone would be, at least at the very beginning, like, I know nothing from mathematics. I don't know anything. And I would always say, do you know how to do multiplication? Do you have, like, actually in Ecuador, these matrices, like from 1 to 9 and 1 to 9 that you need to really memorize?
Yeah, you memorize. We don't learn those techniques. Yeah, we just memorize.
Oh my gosh, numbers comes to my mind.
Yes, so if you know multiplication, you already know a lot. And it's always it's a basic definition here, and here actually where knowledge graphs fit in, and why I got interested in knowledge graphs in the first place. So during my master's, I wanted to do something related to smart education, because the master was related to smart cities, which was going much more towards embedded systems and other things. But I really joined the master because I wanted to do smart education. So it was now or never, in a sense. It was you either take your chances or not. So I got really interested in this because I was already teaching, and in mathematics I had exactly, and many mathematicians have this structure of what comes first or what comes before something else, if we may say. That you would teach quadratic equations. In order to teach quadratic equations, you need to know how to solve the simple one. If you need to teach, for example, x squared plus 3 plus x equals 0, you need first to know x minus 3 equals 0, how to solve it. That's, in a sense, common knowledge. But this common knowledge is not represented in data. It's nowhere really in data that you can somewhere find it and have it in a structured manner, or have the connections between exercise. You can see it's just an exercise, because that's also what a student faces most of the times. It's always the question about the tests. How do we pass the tests? How we pass the exams? The ACT exams, or the baccalaureate exams, or whatever exam it is. This is where the focus goes always. So it's about the exercise. So if I just see an exercise, and a complex one, can I, as a mathematician, I can recognize which parts are required from there. But what if a machine can do that? So it needs to have enough data in order to be able to identify it, and to be able to also to understand the correlations between the data, but also to have the structure and to be able to say, okay, it has this, it requires X, Y, and Z, And X has X1 and X2 as prerequisites. So if you struggle with X, you can go to X1 and X2. And this is something that can be achieved with knowledge graphs, for example, and structured knowledge about the data and the abstract scheme of the data as well, where we need also a lot of metadata that, for example, we describe and we say this exercise requires this and this and is solved with this way.
Oh, that's crazy. So, for coming from a person that I know very little about knowledge graphs, and actually I said I don't like it very much. Like I've been working really little, and it's mainly about social networks, which is maybe the most popular. But I am really surprised now because I didn't know that, yeah, first you have to think of the structure. I thought mainly, okay, there are a lot of nodes and okay, you have to do links. Maybe you can predict links and stuff like that, but I never thought about the structure.
That's our goal. That's, I would say, maybe my goal of this whole research. It's not there yet, if I may say. We are working towards the direction. We have actually proposed with some colleagues, with Martina Galetti and Daniel Dobry, a future paper that would take place hypothetically in 20 years. And we say that the knowledge graphs evolve in such a way that also affect education in such a highly manner where they transform the role of a teacher, than being the one who gives the specific content, to the one of more mentoring role, and also transform the special educations. Because if you think about it, special education, if we say, for example, a person who is blind, it's another dimension of the data, in a sense that it's not that there is some issue with the data, they just want it to be consumed in a specific way. Like, it's not to be read, it's to be heard. So all the special education could potentially, as we have the embeddings and we do this, as you said, link prediction, as we try to do recommendation, as we try right now to say, the king example, where we say a man and kingdom is the king, a woman and the kingdom is the queen, and have these vectors that connect the data. Maybe all the spatial education and so many other things can be just extra dimensions in the data. So if we have a resource that has a structure, that has the content, maybe what we could do is just analyze the whole spatial education into just data dimensions and not have it as stigma, in a sense, as it is right now. But that's a whole big thing. This is like, again, for the vision part, what exists right now. Most knowledge graphs, what they have is entities which refer, for example, to Barack Obama being interlinked with specific relationships to other entities, such as United States of America, such as President of United States, Michelle Obama, and so on. And
Yeah,
what we
exactly.
try to do now,
Then maybe for specifically for people that are not too much into the topic, maybe you give us that easy example to understand actually what is a knowledge graph, because I got excited and I know a little bit, but maybe there is this part of our public who have no idea about it. So what is like a simple example of this, a knowledge graph?
So I would say just the definition of a knowledge graph is the same as the definition of AI. Everyone has their own, everyone is afraid to say what it is. And really, it is like this. And there is no strict definition, if I may say. So a knowledge graph example, as we said, it's like, you can imagine a graph database on the web. It has the nodes and the edges. Nodes are usually entities. They can also be literals. Literal can be, for example, a date. Mm-hmm. And the edges are relations, which could be, for example, Barack Obama is married to Michelle Obama. There's no really a restriction to what an entity can be. It can be a country. It can be a role, as we said, like President of the United States, a person, a thing. It can be an award, for example, Nobel Prize. And the relationships are also not restricted. So this free and open format of knowledge graphs creates both opportunities and obstacles, as anything in life. The big capability of it is that there are big resources, crowdsourced. What a knowledge graph offers in all this AI field is capabilities of data quality checking, explainability, especially if we have like a black box, we can either use it together with a knowledge graph or somehow post or prior to the computation, and being able to see if we get some proper results and we can actually explain or get some less risk in some applications. Definitely, though, not everything that is present in a knowledge graph is true or is accurate. Because if we say that Barack Obama is president of the United States, was true, but it's not true anymore. So there is also some temporality in data. And this temporality data, if I may say again, comes with the education as well. Because if right now on this winter semester, let's say that is ending, you were studying, let's say, statistics, it doesn't mean that in the next semester, statistics will still be relevant to you. Because you were studying maybe statistics, and then next semester you would study data representations. So there are maybe related, maybe you're using some common, for example, libraries that you were using before, but doesn't mean that you're still interested in it. There's also the temporality in data in the education.
Wow. So I wanted just to, while you were explaining, because this is something completely new for me too, and I was also reading about knowledge graphs just to have a little bit of information for this podcast, because I found it very interesting. There was an example, and I think when you were mentioning it, I was also like thinking, like us putting a lot of post-its in the, like I told you, right? So I'm a product manager, so I use a lot of post-its, like color coding posters. And you could see my well, not this background, but you would see my wall, and there is full of post-its of different colors, and every post-it is a node. And if I put let's say a thread with each of them, and have you seen this kind of crime scene where you have a lot of post-its in the wall and you have a lot of like lines over there? Is that like what would say a knowledge graph, where we have relationships from one node to another, and we want to understand those relationships? Like we have a full wall full of let's say sticky notes, and all of them has kind of like a line that connects with the other post-it, and so on and so forth, right? It's something that we call it like that, and a knowledge graph in the sense of like it's for explanation.
Yes, it could be. Although usually we don't visualize a knowledge graph or full part of it, because there are so many nodes and so many edges as well there. So it's very difficult to have something as a visualization. Usually what we would have as visualization is in the downstream applications, because you need to understand that a knowledge graph by itself is just, let's say, a web database. It's nothing else. But the way it is both structured, that it follows the semantic web standards, that has these capabilities of interconnecting the entities and the relations, and whatever you can do later on it is what makes it interesting and fun, if we may say. Yes, so we wouldn't usually visualize the full knowledge graph, as I said, because it would be... Have you ever seen or heard about the linked data cloud, where it's just data sets interconnecting with other data sets? It's not just... So basically you can think about, each one of it can be a knowledge graph. And also knowledge graphs is actually, many people say that it's like the knowledge bases. What is the difference of knowledge bases from knowledge graphs? Knowledge bases were widely used also in the 80s from AI as part of applications. There are some differences between knowledge graphs and knowledge bases, but of course, it's... So there, again, we're going back to the definition. Some people would say, in order to define a knowledge graph, you will need an ontology. Some other would disagree. Maybe you need some part of a schema, maybe not even the schema. or any schema would be necessary. And definitely you need to follow some standards in order to comply with the community and be able to have it able to be reused and shared, like the fair data principles, the findable, sorry, I forgot the accessible and reproducible, and I'm missing one, the interpretable.
Oh.
So there are specific actually standards related to it, yes, that are also introduced by people in the community, which is, again, semantic web community. I believe it's a very active community, very inclusive as well. They really try to push forward to it. I'm very happy to be part of it. I really hope I can stay here and grow and blossom and make things in education. But yes, but I'm telling you, it's we wouldn't necessarily visualize this. We wouldn't necessarily visualize the steps.
But
in that way.
can we say then, like in simple words, that then a database is basically a knowledge, or can be turned into a knowledge graph?
Yeah. Yes, any database,
any
relational database.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. I think then we have more or less a clear idea about that. Especially the people that are computer scientists know what is a database, and then they can maybe grasp the idea. And I have to say, like, yeah, I really like the visualization part, and that was the only part I understood from my studies. The visualization is nice. Okay, so I think we are going to continue with the part of knowledge graphs, but we had also in our head this part about large language models. So maybe we change a little bit, if we all agree, and then maybe later then we come back to the knowledge graphs, because there are still some questions like, what is a personal knowledge graphs? How knowledge graphs actually work in the educational part, how we can use it, how can we implement them, and so on. But maybe we switch for the moment to large language models, because I saw that might be a topic that a lot of people can be interested